Hello, everyone, and welcome to A New Direction. My name is Jay Izzo, and oh man, do we have a great show for you. I am telling you what, it is absolutely outstanding. Are you a sales professional? Okay. Are you someone who's interested in sales? Okay. This show's going to be for you. By the way, are you managing salespeople? Well, this show's going to be for you. Are you somebody who is a CEO of a company who has salespeople working for you? Okay, well, this show is going to be for you. Here's the deal, folks. I am with the guru. I am with the expert. I am with Mr. I'm going to teach you how to sell. And I'm not going to teach you just how to sell well. I'm going to teach you how to sell excellently at a top level. His name is Steve Weinberg. The book is entitled Above Quota Performance, Tips and Techniques to Become a Master Sales Pro. Oh, folks, this right here is 309 pages of gold. Gold. I'm telling you, Jerry, it's gold. That's what it is. It is absolutely outstanding. And yes, that was a Seinfeld reference. Okay. So listen, folks, we're going to be talking with Steve Weinberg. You're going to love him. High energy guy. Just sound principles. Get your notebooks and note papers out. If you're listening to us by podcast, by the way, do not get your notebook out and pencil out while you're driving. Please pull over your car, all right, and do that, because it's going to be this problem. You're going to go, what? Yeah, he said that, okay? But before we get to him, that's what we do every week, right? We are 4-part people, right? We are physical, mental, emotional, spiritual people. And you know that if you are not growing in every one of those areas, the truth is you're not staying static, because if you're not growing, you're dying. So what we want to do is we want to help you grow in physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. How do we do that? Well, first thing you have to do is we have to become aware, and we have to know where we're at right now. So on a scale of 1 to 10, this is how it works. We do this every week. This is how it works. On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being physically I'm and 10 meaning I'm outstanding, right? How would you what number would you give yourself between 1 and 10 if you were to evaluate your exercise, your eating habits, drinking enough water, getting enough sleep, right? 5 being average. Now, look, if you have a low number, don't beat yourself up. That's not what this is about. This is about saying, okay, you know what? I'm a 2. I got some work to do. Maybe I need a little more exercise. Maybe I need to cut some calories. Maybe, I've been drinking a lot of sodas, and even diet sodas instead of drinking more water, and I need to kind of cut that back. Or maybe it is, you know what? I've been burning the candle at both ends, and I need to just get rest. Here's the thing I'm going to tell you, right? Rest is incredibly important. We underestimate it, right? So we need that as well. So on a scale of 10, how would you rate yourself? That's your first number. All right, your second number is this mental intellectual number, right? The truth of the matter is, if you think that you could just sit on your couch and let things come at you, and that somehow you're going to magically become more wise and knowledgeable in what you do, you're wrong. You have to be an active participant in your growth. One of the beautiful things that Steve says about a high performer, traits of a high performing sales pro, you know what it is? They are learners. They're always, and by the way, throughout the entire book, they're learning about the process. They're learning about their client that they're about to propose to. They're learning about how they can improve themselves. They are testing what they're doing, their presentations, to make sure that they're improving. They are learners, and they're consummate learners. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate yourself as a learner in terms of your mental intellectual growth? Okay, it's 2 numbers. The third number is the emotional number. By the way, here's the thing. You want to be a great sales pro? You better have some emotional intelligence. I didn't say it. Steve said that. Steve says that right here in his book. He says, you know what? Your emotional IQ is extraordinarily important, because you better learn to have some empathy. You know what empathy is? That you can understand and tap into the emotions of others, that you really can understand, that you can listen well. And the other thing is, you know what? You're going to get objections. You know what part of emotional intelligence is? Is not getting defensive. How well are you able to control your emotions under stress and pressure? Even Steve says it in his book. Emotional intelligence is incredibly important to being a successful sales professional, right? So on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you evaluate yourself there? And then the last one is the spiritual area. And this is the one where most people struggle, but you're not going to. Because the truth of the matter is we're all spiritual people. Right? The truth of the matter is we all live by faith. You know what? You can put in all the input that you want to put in. You can put in every input. You can prepare as well as you want to prepare. But the truth of the matter is no one controls the scoreboard. You have to have faith in the process that it's going to work out. And we live that way every day. You put your key in the car and you turn it. You believed it was going to start. You drank your cup of coffee this morning, it wasn't poisonous. You walked across the street when the sign said walk and nobody drove across this walkway. We all live by faith, right? We all have plans for the future, right? That haven't happened yet and we believe they're going to happen. But what's more, we believe in things that bring us to a sense of peace and centeredness when there's chaos around us, don't we? And if it's working, then it's working. And the question is, what brings you to a place of peace and centeredness in the midst of chaos? And is it working for you? And does it need to change? So how would you rate yourself? Those 4 areas are like the air in the tires of your car. If all 4 of those tires in your car are low, what happens? It's hard to drive the car, and matter of fact, you're going to ruin it. And if one of the areas are weak, what's going to happen? The car's going to lean one way or another and eventually going to ruin the tire. And the car's not going to run efficiently. It's not going to use the gas right. It's not going to be able to roll the way it's supposed to roll. It's just inefficient and ineffective. So we want to bring all 4 tires up to the right level so that we roll right. And speaking of somebody who does that extraordinarily well, and he's got his tires all the right height. The name is Steve Weinberg. Steve has closed over $500 million in new business throughout his career. He has spent his life selling and helping others sell better, sell faster, and sell more. He is an expert at building, guiding, and sustaining high caliber sales teams. Steve has led many sales kickoffs and introduced formal sales training at several companies. He's been vice president at Dun and Bradstreet Software, AC Nielsen, Deloitte. That's just a few. He earned his BA in economics from North Park University and his MBA from Loyola University Chicago. He's a CPA. He's also an experienced accountant, consultant, and he is a graduate level economics instructor. And he wrote this book, Above Quota Performance. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show and welcome to the first time, and I don't think it's going to be the last time, Steve Weinberg. Steve, welcome to A New Direction.
Thanks, Coach Jay. I'm happy to be here.
Well, let's just dig right into this thing, Steve, because this is an outstanding book. I want to just jump right into section 1, because this book is divided up into sections. I want people to understand that it is sectional. But let's jump into chapter 1 here, which is entitled "More than 50% of sales pros do not achieve their sales quotas." Let's give some statistics and let's tell them why that's happening.
It's an amazing number, and it's not something that I really realized when I first started writing the book. But I found all kinds of research that showed that the number of salespeople that don't reach quota on any given year is anywhere from 40 to 66%. Wow. So I chose 50% as a good average for it. But when you think about that, half of the salespeople don't meet their quota. So, why is that? And I think there are several reasons for that. If you ask the salespeople, the ones that didn't meet the quota, they would tell you their quota is too high. That's the obvious reason, right? But 50% did make their quota, right? So it's more than likely the quotas were set properly by the company. And so what are some of the other reasons? Well, when I started digging into this, I found 3 or 4 that were really clear and mattered a whole lot more than others. One is that a lot of salespeople target the wrong prospects, and they spend a lot of time chasing them. A lot of salespeople also don't properly qualify the prospects. So if someone indicates some interest in hearing about what they have, they'll talk to them until the cows come home. And they'll, as long as they get a friendly person, they'll spend a lot of time with them. And then later on, they're surprised when they don't buy. So I think that's part of it. I think a lot of times the salespeople don't have a compelling value proposition. And so the buyer doesn't understand what's in it for what they buy. It's nice that you showed me this beautiful solution that you have, which looks pretty, it's interesting, but I don't know what it does for me, that kind of thing. And of course, a big one is that the salesperson throughout the sales cycle never contacted the key decision maker. So the key decision maker was never bought in on what they were looking at, and the salesperson wasted their time. And since we only have a finite number of days in a year, when the end of the year comes, they find that they didn't meet their quota.
So I'm going to do something here. I'm going to we didn't talk about me doing this, okay? But I'm going to do this because I just want to do this for the people who are salespeople. You have these questions that you ask, and here's the deal. I'm going to ask these questions that Steve asks in his book, and if you answer yes to at least 4 of these questions, you either have obsolete or suboptimal sales skills. Are you okay if I read these questions out?
Sure.
Okay. Here's the first question, sales professionals. Did you fail to reach your sales quota last year or in 2 of the past 3 years? Is that a yes or no? Did you have the opportunities that you forecasted would close but did not? Yes or no? Were you unable to reach or have conversations with the key decision maker in several of your opportunities? Yes or no? Did you find that you frequently competed based solely on price? Yes or no? Did you have difficulty effectively articulating the value of your company's proposition at critical times? Next, did you prepare responses to requests for proposals but were not invited to present? And did your company fail to provide you with enough leads? I think these questions are incredibly powerful and are great valuation for the people who are listening and watching the show, because if they've said yes to at least 4 of these, they got an issue, don't they?
Yes.
And you talk.
That's a good idea for people to self-recognize where they're failing.
Right. And here's the other thing that you say though in this chapter it comes towards the end of the chapter that I think is so powerful, and I want you to address it. The bottom line is you own your success or failure as a salesperson.
Absolutely true. I mean, again, at the end of the year, as I met with a lot of salespeople, they would give me their excuses. The pre-sales person wasn't available to them. The marketing literature was crap. It snowed on the day they were supposed to fly somewhere. They all had the list of excuses. But really, if you do very well, you'll be recognized, and if you do very poorly, it's your fault too. It works both ways. And as a salesperson, you own your success or failure.
Yeah.
It's not your boss, and it's not the people that you rely on.
Right. Yeah. I love that because I love accountability. And
Right.
I think we have to be accountable to ourselves. We can't. I think the easiest thing for us to do is just to blame and rational,
Sure.
right? It's just easier to do it,
Sure. There's just an unlimited number of excuses. I mean, we learned that early on in grammar school when we said the dog. So it never ends.
Yeah, the dog ate my paper. Yeah. Yeah. Your dog died last week, and your dog still ate your paper. I don't get it, but
Right.
it's all good. All right, I'm going to do a switch on you. I know because you baited me into it, and so this is how good of a salesman you are. You baited me into it.
Let's go.
So chapter 3 is if you're not winning, you're losing. And this is an insight.
It sounds like a really ordinary and common statement, but it's something that when I joined different sales companies or different companies in sales roles, I explained it to people, and they would say, of course, if you're not winning, you're losing. I said, no, you're not understanding what I'm saying. What I'm saying is when we meet to do your account review, to go over the opportunity, I'm going to ask you questions. And if you can't answer to me that you're actually moving this forward step by step, that means you're losing. So let me give you an example. So I'd say to somebody, well, how's this sale going? Oh, it's going wonderful. Well, why is it going wonderful? Because when I call them, they take my call. They're very nice to me. We have nice chats. They're very accommodating. They're willing to see me when I want to come out and see them. Okay. Well, when was the last time you talked to them? Well, it's been about 2 weeks. And from that time till today, what have you done? Well, I haven't done anything. I'm waiting for them to get back to me. Things like that. Well, did you set up any next steps where you're committed to do something and they're committed to do something? No, I haven't done that. So the reality was in 90% of those cases, where the salesperson was feeling good, they were losing, but they just didn't know it. And the other thing is that most people I find in the corporate world are nice people, and they just don't want to give the salesperson bad news. So They avoid it. So the salesperson will call them up and say, how things going, Nancy? And then she says, oh, things are wonderful. And she knows that they've already selected or they're about to select someone else, but she's not going to tell that person until it's already a done deal. And then either she goes radio silent or she gives them this big, what I call the butt call, which is, we thought you were really great and we really like you, but, okay, but we chose somebody else.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And yeah, here's the thing. And by the way, folks, I'm going to just tell you about this inside this book. Steve has throughout every chapter a takeaway or more per chapter, depending on the chapter. And I want people to understand, because the takeaway 2 that you have in this chapter, and we're in chapter 3, is if you are winning, you should be receiving continuous feedback. I thought that was an interesting takeaway for salespeople. Dig into that just a little.
Yeah, I mean, you should be moving every time you speak, or every week there should be progress made on the account. And if that, and of course people take vacations and they get sick and there's funerals and births and different lapses. But if not for that, if you're not moving it along, then the chances are pretty strong you are losing. So you have to have that attitude that if it's not moving, if you're not winning, that you are losing.
Yeah,
losing doesn't mean loss, but it does mean losing.
I want to give a quote that you have in there. You said, you should be regularly qualifying the opportunity throughout the sales cycle. Qualifying is not a one-time event. Talk about that a little bit.
Right, exactly. Every time you speak with someone, chat with them, have any kind of interaction with them, you should be asking them, does this meet your needs? Am I still a viable solution? Can I meet with the decision maker? Do you have a budget for this? Do you still think this will save you a lot of money? Does this still fit in your strategic plans? These questions should be asked repeatedly throughout the whole process. It's not a one-time event where you have a qualifying checklist and you just mark them down and then hand it to the sales manager and say, see, they scored 80, so I should call on them. You need to be doing this throughout the whole time and with different people, not just the one person that may be your favorite contact. I mean, your favorite contact is the person who gives you the most information and is the friendliest to you, but that may not be the right person as well. So you need to find that out. And when you get information that is different from what you've expected, then you need to react to it in different ways.
You also make a statement in this chapter that I want to read, that because you hit this one strong now. You say weak sales professionals are often reluctant to put the buyer on the spot by asking for a commitment. If a sales pro is not willing to do this, he or she belongs in another profession. You believe that? You believe that firmly?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And I view sales as a partnership or a two-way transaction where you're giving them information and you're also expecting them to give you information. It's not a one-way transaction. It's a two-way in the best of the world.
You have, I'm going to move on to chapter 4 here real quickly. I'm not going to I don't want to spend a bunch of time on talking about why sales trainers are often wrong, but you do say here that maybe wrong is not the correct word. Perhaps it's obsolete is probably a more appropriate term. And, but one of the things that did stand out to me is that you talk about there are many specialized sales closes that are commonly used to manipulate an unwilling or uncertain buyer prospect. And I have, working with salespeople and having been in sales before, I know these sales manipulation techniques, right? And I just want to get your idea on a couple of these, right? One that you call the Ben Franklin close, which is also known as the pro-con close. Talk about that one and why that's a manipulative technique.
Well, that's again, I find, as you mentioned, I find a lot of these closes to be tricky, to be manipulative, and I think to be very frank, I think they're very insulting. And when people use them on me, I generally will walk away. So if I'm buying something, whether I'm in an appliance store or something like that, they'll if they start pushing me that way, I'll just leave. I'll tell them I'm not interested. But the Ben Franklin close is one that's where somebody comes up to you, or they propose a way of evaluating, where you list on, let's say, the left side of a sheet all the reasons to do it, and on the right side the reasons not to do it. And the whole idea behind it is that the left side will be greater than the right side, and then there'll be more reasons to do it, and then they'll push you very hard to close. What I propose in the book is what I call a natural close, which is that if you do your job right as a sales pro and you provide all the information that the prospect needs, and there is a compelling value proposition, then at the right point you can say to them, okay, it is now a good time for you to buy, or are you ready to buy, or have I answered your questions? Can I get the order? Because you do want to ask for the order, but there will be a time where that is best to ask. And I find that when you try all these tricky closes, what you're doing is actually alienating many prospects. And I think today, as buyers, as the millennials have entered the market into the buying area, I think they, more than their predecessors, get very upset with tricky closes or the kind of closes that we've seen in the past. We're used to it. People that are baby boomers and Gen X's, we've seen these our whole life, but the millennials, not so much.
Yeah, even Gen Z is not a big fan of it, and
right, exactly.
They're not at all. His name is Steve Weinberg. The book is entitled Above Quota Performance, Tips and Techniques to Becoming a Master Sales Pro. You're listening to him here on A New Direction. Folks, I've got two great sponsors. One is Epic Physical Therapy. To my physical therapist, I think they should be yours too. Listen, they work with professional athletes. They work with regular people just like me. Listen, they will customize a treatment program that is just for you. So when you're ready for your epic relief, for your epic recovery, and your epic results, look no further. Go to Epic Physical Therapy. That's epicpt.com. That's EPICPT.com. And Linda Craft Team Realtors, listen, for more than 38 years, they've been helping thousands of people all over the world transition in life. You say, whoa, I thought you said they were a real estate company. Yeah, right. It's true. But you understand, right, that every place that you ever lived has been a transition in life. It's absolutely true. Whether you're selling your home or buying a home, the truth of the matter is it is a life transition. They want to help make that life transition absolutely as smooth and stress-free as possible. So when you're ready to make your next transition, start with Linda Craft Team Realtors. That's lindacraft.com. That's LINDACRAFT.com. And we're back here on A New Direction with Steve Weinberg and the book Above Quota Performance, Tips and Techniques to Becoming a Master Sales Pro. We're just getting started into this thing. I'm going to go through a few more, Steve, if you don't mind. There's just a couple of these closes that I want to talk about because I see these. I know that you do a lot in B2B, but I see these in B2C. Of course, we all remember the Glenn Ross, ABC always been closing, right? Don't do that. Here's the one though that I see often, but that you say don't do this, and that is some trainers have advised changing your style and your posture to mimic that of the buyer.
I call that sales malpractice. So what they're saying is that if you're meeting with a buyer and they talk slow, that you talk slow. If they talk loud, you talk loud. If their cadence is fast, then yours is fast. So that you should mimic that. Now, can you imagine? I can't imagine someone sitting in front of me imitating me while I'm speaking with them.
Oh, I can't either.
So, but this is in several sales training courses and in several sales books. And I mean, who wants to sell to a parrot? I mean, you can't, that again, you're insulting the buyer by doing this. but people really do that. Now they think that's a way of making the prospect more comfortable by being more like them, and I just don't see that. I can't imagine that.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you. All right, here's another one, Steve, that I often talk about, Steve, that I see Steve whenever I am, you know, whenever I see salespeople, Steve, work with other salespeople, Steve. And that's that they keep using the buyer's first name, which is which you call a distortion of Dale Carnegie.
It's yes, because Dale Carnegie, who was an amazing teacher in the early and mid 1900s, found that people reacted that way. People like to hear their names, so that when someone comes up to me and says, "Hey, Steve," I will pay more attention to them. But do you want to have a conversation with someone where every sentence they start out with, "Well, Steve, what are you going to do about this? Steve, what are you going to do about that?" I mean, that really gets old fast. So, and as you say, it is a distortion of Dale Carnegie. That's not. I'm sure that's not what he meant.
No, it's not what he meant. And I think that salespeople do. I don't know if you agree with this now. I think salespeople do it because they're trying to remember their name more than they're trying to actually
Yes. Yes.
make a point. Here's the last one I want to talk about, because this one is also one that I see across the board, and that is whenever you're closing or negotiating or presenting your proposal, and there comes a point, silence.
Isn't that funny? Yeah. Oh, and I've heard this often, and the next thing that they'll tell you, the sales trainer will tell you, is that the first person to speak loses. So are you supposed to sit in a room with someone and you say, "Hey, Jane, what do you think about my proposal today?" And Jane doesn't say anything. So you're supposed to spend the next 20 minutes just staring at her? I mean, is this, come on. I mean, at some point you need to say, "Jane, do you want to tell me what you're thinking? Or Jane, is it time to maybe take a break and have a cup of coffee and let's, resume the conversation later? Or do you want to sit there and just wait for her to say something?" I mean, that's just absolutely amazing. And I've heard this several times from from some very good sales trainers and good contract negotiators.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna do one more, just because this is another one that I see, and I hear, I get it sold to me. Sell the sizzle, not the steak.
Right. Yes. So the idea behind it is that, what you're selling may have some features that are really what we could sometimes call sexy, or really high-tech features. So rather than, let's say if we're selling, I'll just say a car. So if we're selling a car, rather than sell the reliability of the car or the reputation of the car or the service from the dealer, rather than do that, talk about the high-tech lights and the windshield wipers and the radio that goes on by going like this. It goes louder and softer. I mean, again, you're avoiding the key value that your solution brings to the buyer. And that's what you really should be focusing on, because again, it's all about the buyer and what's in it for them.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something else you do in this chapter that I really love. And you talk about why objections are good. And matter of fact, you even go as far as to say, if you do not receive objections, ask for them. Oh, Steve, I think you're opening up a Pandora's box here, but I'm going to let you roll with that. Why are objections good, and why do you ask for them?
I would say, if you would ask me, what one principle do I have in the book that I feel most strongly about more than anything else, it would be the fact that objections should be welcomed. And I have gone through many, probably in excess of 20 sales training classes by some outstanding sales trainers. And in every class, there will be a session on objection handling. And that could be anywhere from a few hours to, I've had some that were workshops that went over days where there were role plays. And what the sales trainer would emphasize is that how you had to nullify the objection. So if the buyer voiced an honest objection in the meeting or in an email or whatever, it was your job to prove to the buyer that what they had said was not true. So if they said, for example, Steve, your price is too high. So you're supposed to say, oh no, Jerry, it's not too high. I know it's not too high. I've studied the market. I know we're the same as most of the other people in the market. Oh, you're wrong. Our price is not too high. Well, that's not what I'm suggesting. What I'm suggesting is that the sales pro should drill down into that and welcome that. And we'll talk a little bit about seeking it in a minute, but the answer should be, okay, why do you think the price is too high? What is it, is it too high relative to your budget? Is it too high based on the return on investment that you're expecting to get? I mean, why do you feel that way? And not to disrespect them. You should honor their objections and, in fact, encourage objections, because objections to me are the roadmap to making the sale. So if I'm trying to sell somebody and they really have 3 or 4 objections, and I discuss it with them and I can explain to them how we can satisfy what their concerns are, then I have a really good shot at making the sale. If, on the other hand, I try to make them look stupid, especially in front of their bosses or their peers, I mean, what would that accomplish? So going to the second part, which is to seek them. If you're in a room and you say to somebody, okay, what do you think about what I presented today? And they're completely silent. Then it's your job then to seek what the issues are, what's bothering them, and get them to converse with you. So you say to them, okay, is there anything about what I've shown you today that won't work in your environment? Do you have any concerns about it? Do you have any concerns about my company? Are you worried about whether we're going to be around tomorrow? Are you worried about the implementation time frame? Are you worried about the impact on the people that you have right now? So you bring out all these objections and then get them to speak with you about it. Is it better not to deal with them at that point in time, or to deal with them on the day they told you they decided to go with someone else?
Yeah, then it's too late. Then it's too late. I want to point out to people, though, that Steve in his book has his quick guide to overcoming objections. It's just a 1-page part of the book that's got, I think it's got 10 objections that are common that he's run across, and he's got ways to handle this. They're absolutely phenomenal. You really need to get the book so that you can read through these, because they're absolutely gold. I said that earlier in the show, but they really, truly are gold when it comes to that. I'm going to move on to section 2. Are you okay with that, Steve?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to move to chapter 5 called, and I just want to take one takeaway from chapter 5, just one. And it's takeaway number 7. And I just want you to address it. People buy from sellers they trust, not just the ones they like.
Again, this goes back to sales training. We were always taught that you need to be nice to people and make them like you, and they'll buy from you. Well, that worked. And I would say that worked in the 80s and the 90s. But in the 2000s, it doesn't work anymore, in the 2020s. What we've seen is a real revolution in buying. And the buyers are far more sophisticated. They do much more research ahead of time. And by the time you have an audience with them, they're really far along on this. And I have seen where they will buy from people that they don't like if they believe that it'll do the job for them, and if they trust the company that they're buying from. So it's all about trust. Now, it's better for the salesperson to establish trust with the buyer so that they understand, so that you can have a good exchange of ideas. But the reality is trust is really the most important factor in making a purchase decision.
That's
They
beautiful.
won't buy from someone they won't trust, but they will buy from someone they don't like.
Interesting.
And I think we all do that, don't we? Don't we, when we go and buy a car, do we like the car salesperson we're dealing with? I mean, truly, right? I mean, other if they're my cousin, sure, yeah, I like my cousin Al, but other than that, I mean, really, okay, do we like it? Do we like how we're treated in some stores? We'll still buy from them because maybe we trust the store or we really believe in the solution, but we may not like the salesperson.
That's so true. That is so true. That's really, really good. I'm going to jump all the way to chapter 8 because chapter 8 is really, really powerful. It's called The Real Why. And, we've talked a lot about, there's a lot of talk about, knowing your why and those type of things, but we're talking about knowing the real why in the buyer, right? So help us walk through the real why, because we often don't get this right, do we?
Oh, I would say more than half of the time we don't. Again, that's YWHY. So again, a lot of times when I did account reviews with salespeople, I would say to them, why is the company buying from you right now? What is the reason for it? And the salesperson will say, well, what do you mean? And I'd say, well, you're asking them to spend, maybe 50 or 100 or $1,000 or $1 million. Why would they do that? What is the reason behind it? And if they couldn't give you the reason, it's not a pretty good sign for them that they're going to make the sale. So, and the reasons are often not disclosed. So they won't, like a lot of times they may be embarrassed about it. Like, for example, they may have received a fine from the SEC or the EPA, or in the case of banks from FinCEN. So they don't want to say, well, we just got fined $1 million because we're not doing a certain thing right. So they may not tell you that. Or they may not tell you that the reason why is because the CEO told them they had to do it and they had to do it right now. But it's important to know why they're buying and to drill down into that. And that will make it a whole lot easier for you to build your sales strategy and work with them once you understand that.
You have a quote in here that I just want to read, and that is, you say the real why could either be personal or professional. And you say, as much as we want to take credit for inspiring our buyer to purchase through our persuasive skills, the reality is people buy for their reasons, not yours.
Yes, and a lot of times people will buy for emotional reasons, and then they'll build a rational case afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen it so many times. And I've had it happen to me myself. And I used an example of a time I was looking at a car that I really had no practical use for it, but I really fell in love with it, and I decided to buy it. And then I, tried to justify it to my wife that it was this really, cute little car that I would really like driving around in. But again, it really is all that matters to them. And I remember the company, one of the companies I worked for a long time had its headquarters in Boston. And when we closed the sale, I said to the buyer, I said, well, I'd like to know some more of the reasons why you bought from us. And he looked at me and he said, well, my daughter's going to school in Boston. And if I buy from you, I can go to your training session and see my daughter.
Mm.
So, I mean, little things like that do matter. And, I didn't know that at the time, but it was important to him.
Yeah. Yeah. You even quote Professor Theodore Levitt from Harvard, where you say people don't want to buy a 1/4-inch drill. They want a 1/4-inch hole. The drill is the means to the end. So if you're selling the tool, provide the emphasis and a vision of the results, not your product or service.
Absolutely true. You want the result, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're right. Yeah. But I think what we do is we get so short-sighted. We sell the features, right? Or we sell the tool and we're not giving them a vision how to use it. And,
Correct.
And
Correct.
I think that's a weakness of sales, a person who's not a high-level sales pro.
And if you don't know, if a salesperson doesn't know the real reason why they're buying and why they're buying right now, then they're in danger of not closing the sale.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. His name is Steve Weinberg. The book entitled Above Quota Performance, Tips and Techniques to Becoming a Master Sales Pro. You're listening to him here on A New Direction. Folks, Epic Physical Therapy, I love them. They're just awesome. Heidi, Andrew, the staff is amazing. They have the most advanced top-of-the-line equipment, including the Ultra G anti-gravity treadmill, the Normatec sleeves, the Game Ready, my favorite, by the way. And they're trained and certified in the most comprehensive cutting-edge treatments like blood flow restriction therapy, dry needling, cupping. That's just a few. Look, when you are ready for your epic relief, your epic recovery, your epic results, don't look any further. Go to epicpt.com. That's EPICPT.com. And Linda Craft, Team Realtors, listen, for more than 38 years, they have been helping people transition in their life, whether it's selling a home or buying a home. They help people all over the world. They're unaffiliated. They're not part of a national company, so they can find the best real estate professional in your area. So if you want an unbiased opinion of who can help you and how to help people transition the best for you, then you know what? Start with Linda Craft Team Realtors. That's lindacraft.com. That's LINDACRAFT.com. And we're back here on A New Direction with my friend Steve Weinberg. Above Quota Performance, Tips and Techniques to Becoming a Master Sales Pro. Steve, are you enjoying this at all?
Absolutely. I love talking about this. I mean, I love sales. I got into sales somewhat by accident. It wasn't my career choice out of college, and I love it. And I think a lot of people should consider it as a vocation. I think universities and colleges should have a sales track added into their business school.
I totally agree with that. Actually, I really do. I think there are so many sales opportunities out there, and it could be an incredibly lucrative career. And if you do it extraordinarily well, you're going to do well for yourself and your family. So I am in agreement. I think it's a piece of our educational system that certainly is lacking. I want to move to chapter 11 because I think it is a pivotal chapter in your book called Value Propositions and How They Help Sales. So let's talk about what the value proposition is. And I think there's two things I'd like to accomplish here. One is how we underutilize it, because we do. And then how do we use it in the sales process?
Well, first of all, let's define what a value proposition is. So a value proposition is the unique, positive business or monetary value that your product or service brings to the customer. And if you can't articulate that in a very succinct or elevator pitch type environment, then why would someone buy from you? So you need to explain to somebody that if you buy this is what value it'll bring to you. And you need to be able to differentiate your offering from those of your competitors by articulating a very clear value proposition. So the value proposition is key to making a sale, because why would someone buy from you if they don't understand what's in it for them and how it will help them in their job, or help the company, or help them gain market share, or lower costs, or increase revenue, or bring a value of some kind to the company. What I find is marketing, I think overall marketing organizations don't understand this. They're into the, to the sizzle. So they want to show you all the, the neat little tricks that, you have, all the, maybe artificial intelligence, or all, anything that right now is, they think is important, but what they don't understand is what the customer wants.
Let me ask you this, just based on your opinion. I just want your opinion on this, because you've been doing this for so long and you've trained a lot of salespeople. How many salespeople, percentage wise, do you think actually can accurately and succinctly articulate their value proposition?
Wow, I would say under 50%.
Hmm.
You
I,
know,
I would agree with you. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I remember a situation where our CEO came into a sales meeting and then drilled the salespeople and said, explain to me why I should buy this. And most of the salespeople couldn't do it.
Mm.
They would say, well, because it's really good. The product is, it's a good product. It really works. Well, that's not good enough.
Mm.
Uh, it's got to be, what does it do for you? Again, for you, the prospect. What is it? How is it going to make your life better? How's it going to make the company better? How are you going to become more profitable?
Mm.
How can it make it easier for you to enter a new market
Mm.
or whatever it is you're working on? How can it help you on your supply chain? How can it lower your inventory costs? How can it make it easier for you to close your books at the end of the month? All of these things matter. And a salesperson needs to understand that. So it's not necessarily, again, the bells and whistles that you've been told about by the product or the marketing people. It's what the customer is looking for and how it'll help them out in their daily life.
Mm. And this goes back to, again, something that you talked about earlier, and that is your value proposition can be personal or professional
Yes.
that you're trying to hit here, right? So,
Yes.
and I know, and I'm probably jumping ahead. I don't mean to do that. We'll come back if I am, but you do talk about that we buy emotionally, and
There's no doubt about it.
so
Yeah,
doesn't value proposition have an emotional attachment to it?
Sure. I mean, I buy emotionally, and I think probably everybody else does
Sure.
too. And as I mentioned, when you do buy emotionally, you won't admit it. You'll say, "Well, I bought it because it does this, this, and this." It's like when I explained to my wife why I need a new set of golf clubs. The reason why I'm going to do it is because they came out with new technology, and I want to lower my score.
Right.
Well, no, that's not the real reason. The real reason was I was in the golf shop and I saw this and it was on sale and I couldn't pass it up. That's the real reason. The ones I have work fine, but I saw this new set of Ping golf clubs and I went, "Wow, look at that!" Or Titleist, and I just couldn't pass it up. All they wanted was $500 for it, and it retailed for $799. What a deal!
It's so true. I'm laughing.
And
I'm laughing because I've done that with golf clubs. I have.
that's right. I mean, and then once I buy them, then I try to rationalize it to everybody. Well, this is really going to help my golf game, you know.
Yeah. And here's the thing though, if your value proposition is done well, right? And if
Right,
it's not weak, right? There's going to be some sort of an emotional appeal. It has to be.
right. Emotion matters. I mean, every one of us has emotions, right? So
Right.
it does matter. And our
Right.
motives can be emotional or they can be rational or
Right.
both.
Right. Well, you talk about that we have to have you have to have an empathetic as a great sales pro are empathetic, right?
Yes,
And empathy appeals to our emotional part of ourselves, right?
yes,
And so when we don't have if we try to do this, and you talk about this, you quoted the statistics, and it's that 63% of the people will remember more about your presentation emotionally, and 5% of people will only remember the statistics. And that's astounding because the point is to be memorable, right?
yes. And what are we trained on? So the salespeople are trained on the mechanics of a presentation. So and there are amazing presenters that are far better than I'll ever be in explaining to somebody how to make better eye contact, how to modulate your voice, how to sit up straight, and all the optimal things that a salesperson needs to do. But the reality is that, I mean, what is the prospect buying? Are they buying the prettiest salesperson with the nicest presentation? No, you want to make your presentation more memorable. And there are ways to do that. And I articulate a number of them in the book. And I've actually put together recently a presentation of 12 steps to make it more memorable. You want the people when they leave the room to remember you in 24 hours or 48 hours or by the end of the week, and what was different about yours than the others. And there are ways to do that. And a really good example of that I use, and I use this as well, is that a lot of people may know the history of the Gettysburg Address that Abraham Lincoln made in 1963. Well, the real story behind that was that this was to commemorate the battle. And there was a gentleman who was well known. He was the dean of Harvard School. And he came out and spoke for 2 hours right before Abraham Lincoln. He had a prepared speech and went on and on and on. Abraham Lincoln got up and spoke for 2 minutes. And which speech do we remember? Okay.
Yeah.
2 minutes versus 2 hours. So the Gettysburg Address is probably the most memorable speech in the history of the United States. So again, what we need to do as salespeople is try to make our content more relevant. And there are things that we can do as presenters to make our content more memorable to the people in the room. And one of the ways is to tell stories and make it more emotional, and not just cite facts to them. And the worst thing I think in the world that somebody could do is get up and read PowerPoints to them. I mean, I think that's that's a waste of time. And again, I think that's insulting.
Yeah, I didn't mean to jump ahead to chapter 19 that fast, but it just seemed like a natural.
No, that's fine.
Natural progression, because and you did say it, it's better to craft your presentation away from the facts and more towards the feeling. And you do quote Maya Angelou here saying, "I've learned that people will forget what you said, the things that you did, but the people will never forget how you made them feel."
Absolutely true. It's true.
Yeah.
I can think of some of the best speeches I ever heard, and a lot of them were very emotional and very uplifting, and they got to me that way. If someone just came up and recited facts to me, I would be bored within a minute. I'd be zoning out and at 2 minutes I'd have my smartphone out and I'd be checking my emails.
Yeah. Well, let's jump all the way to chapter 24 real quick here, and let's talk about in chapter 24 just a few, because we're running out of time, some of the characteristics of high sales performers, high performance traits. And you have a list. You have a list of 30, and I know you started out with just 10, and it kept growing. Give us a few of your top high performance traits for salesperson.
Okay. Well, first of all, one of the things I wanted to do as a sales manager, was to be able to identify high performers. So I looked at the high performers that I had, and I tried to figure out what their common traits were. My first realization was the high performers are all very different. It's kind of amazing. But when I took, let's say, the top 5 in the company and looked at them, they all were very different in their styles, how they approached prospects, what their work habits were, their personal traits, and so forth. But I did find characteristics that were in common. And the first one was high character and integrity. And of course, it's a favorite of mine, because I don't believe in slick salespeople that hit and run and move on to the next one, because those people are a dying breed, and they may have short-term success, but not long-term. So character and integrity really do matter. I think the second one would be that they need to be self-motivated. They don't need to be prodded in the morning to get out of bed and go to work. These people are, they're working at 6 a.m. and they're working at 10 at night. And, they're doing this on their own. They have a passion about their work. The third is that intelligence matters. The best salespeople are intelligent people. The fourth is achievement. Now, I've seen salespeople do amazing things beyond any expectation that I ever had in order to achieve, the President's Club or the Quota Club or to get recognition at the sales meeting. That meant more to them to be able to bring their spouse to a short trip or a long trip, or to get a new set of luggage or whatever it is, to get that recognition in front of their peers, they would move mountains and do things that you just couldn't believe. I think sales acumen and sales intuition is very important. They need to be able to think on their feet. If no sale ever goes as we planned it on day one. It hasn't happened yet, and it never will. Okay, it just won't. So you need to be able to adjust. The sixth area is empathy, as we've talked about this. If the salesperson doesn't care about their customer and about helping the customer out, I just don't think they'll make it. Emotional IQ, salespeople have to understand. They have to be able to accept rejection. They've got to be able to go on to the next sale. They've got to be able to deal with things that happen, like perhaps their pre-salesperson didn't make the plane for the trip that day, or any number of things that could happen. Self-confidence is really important. Again, the high performers all think that they're high performers, and they expect to be high performers. You could say in many cases, these are high ego people. Mm. They go hand in hand. I've never seen a high performer that didn't have a large ego. Yeah, I haven't seen it. They have to have good communication abilities, and this is both oral and written. And I think that's even become more important now that everybody relies on emails and chats and so forth. I think they have to have persuasion abilities. So they need to be able to explain to somebody why it's good for them to buy their solution or accept their proposal. And another one that's really important to me is high energy. So there are no high performing salespeople that are lazy people. These are people that really want to be active. They want to work. They want to keep busy. They don't want to take the day off. They don't want to go golfing. They don't. I found that a lot of salespeople wouldn't even take their entitled vacations. If you said to them, did you take a vacation? No, I don't have time for that. Well, you need to do that. Well, I'll do it when I can do it. And then the end of the year comes, and I'd say to them, well, did you ever take your vacation? No, I never did it. So, I'll do it sometime around President's Club. When we go to the NASA or someplace like that, I'll take another couple days, and that's what they do. They just squeeze it in that way. Yeah. So I think those are like my top 10 characteristics of high performers.
I love those. Matter of fact, I love all 30. But we're going to let people buy the book to get the rest of them. How about that?
Absolutely. Buy that book.
Really, the book is entitled Above Quota Performance, Tips and Techniques in Becoming a Master Sales Pro. Steve, you've been great. I hope you've enjoyed it. Tell people how they can get a hold of you.
Well, they can get a hold of me at my website, which is www.steveweinbergsales. That's STEVEWEINBERGSALES. One word, steveweinbergsales.com. And they can leave a message for me, and I will contact them back. I'm also on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. So I'm in all the social media, but they can get a hold of me probably best through the website.
By the way, there's a whole entire chapter devoted to LinkedIn that we never got to. That wasn't intention, but it's a very powerful chapter. I believe it's chapter 16, and it's absolutely fantastic. Steve, thanks. Stay with me.
Next time on LinkedIn.
All right. So stay with me. Folks,
thank you, Jay.
You're welcome. Folks, it's a show. You know what I say to you every week? You're in control of three things, regardless of your circumstances: your attitude, your effort, and getting back up again. That's your resiliency. Doesn't matter what's happening. You can control it. Take control of it now. I'm going to be back next week with another great guest and another great book, which means it's going to be another great show. And as I say to you, everywhere, all over the world, ciao, everybody.
Goodbye.